All right, what's up? What's good? What's happening? What it do, baby? You are tuned in to another edition of the Why Not Us, Why Not Now podcast. It's your boy Xavier, aka X, aka Zay, joined by my brother from another Kory Blackshear. Y'all know him as KB. KB, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's happening? What's happening?
Man, we got through the North last week. This week we taking everybody through the East. So, just as a reminder, KB, please tell the people what we are venturing through for these next few weeks.
So we're continuing from last week, break down each division, team by team, going over their offseason moves, if they got better, if they got worse. We're breaking down all of it, give our prediction for the upcoming season, see, who we have finishing at the top of the division, all the way to who we have finishing last in the division. And we're going division by division all the way until we get through every single team. And right now, this week, this episode, we will be covering both the AFC East and the NFC East.
So, if y'all haven't picked it up within the past 2 weeks, this is also going based off a compass direction. So, last week we did both sides of the North. This week we're doing both sides of the East. And the next time we come to you, we're going to leave it as a surprise for who we're going to come to for you next. But let's go ahead and start off with the AFC East, man. And got to start off with the winningest team in that division for the past few years, but they did not win the division last year. They made it to the playoffs as a wild card, and that would be the Buffalo Bills. And things are going to be different for that organization in 2026, much different than they were in 2025. Before we even start about the changes that the team has going on, KB, we got to begin with the fact that they're going to be playing in a brand new stadium. The place known for so many years as Ralph Wilson Stadium, no more. They've already actually started the demolition in Buffalo of that stadium. They are playing in a new home beginning in 2026. Still going to be in Western New York in the Buffalo area, but a brand new stadium. And it also should be more weather friendly. And if you know anything about Buffalo in the winters, when you see those games in December and January, that should be very helpful for them and their fans going forward. We're talking about the big moves that was made. Obviously, the big talker that had everybody talking, especially after the playoffs ended in Denver, was the future of head coach Sean McDermott. And it looked like he was going to get to stay there for a while, but they ultimately ended up making the move, moving off of him and promoting Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, to head coach.
Yeah, I'm not mad at the move. I think certain things ran its course. Sean McDermott actually had a couple of chances to get to a Super Bowl in his time in Buffalo. Great teams. You had the NFL MVP and Josh Allen. A lot of things went right, but a lot of things capped off at the same time. Buffalo had his number of chances to make make Super Bowl runs, and that was in the Mahomes era. That was in an era where you were going against the guys like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, just to name a few in the AFC. So I think that it was kind of like one of those things where I was always looking at it like, if they don't have somebody in mind, they're gonna probably look in-house. So that was always my thing with Joe Brady. But I mean, I look at it like this. It was one of those moves that had to be made. We already talked about a couple of coaches that we were looking at that probably should have gotten the same exit that Sean McDermott had, just because things have not worked out, and he's had the level of success that a lot of these coaches we talked about haven't necessarily had. So it's a little bit different, but I look at it like, for Joe Brady, new beginning, a bigger role, bigger responsibility. Josh Allen, it could be a new beginning for him as well. So looking forward to seeing what Buffalo has, but they have a lot of things trending in the right directions going into next season.
They do. But you brought up those quarterbacks Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Here's the thing about last season none of those three were in the postseason. It was a new crop of quarterbacks who were in there. And that had to be considered like your best chance to really get it done because it's like teams in the 90s in the NBA. And Jordan went on that hiatus, retired for a year and some change after the death of his father, went and played baseball and then came back. The Houston Rockets took advantage of those opportunities. The Knicks had a chance, Pacers had a chance, Orlando had a chance. Only the Rockets could seize that opportunity. But I bring that up to say you have to strike while the iron is hot. Because if y'all think that Kansas City is going to be in the doldrums again this season, I honestly think y'all are in for a surprise. And for many of you, it's going to be an unpleasant surprise. They had to make this move simply for the fact that they could not strike while the iron was hot. And it's unfortunate that Sean McDermott ended up having to take all the blame for that, especially when you consider that a lot of this is because there were players in certain positions that they just did not have that they needed, mainly because of poor drafting. And the man who oversaw that drafting, not only did he get to keep his job, he got promoted to another title, and that would be Brandon Beane going from the general manager to the president of football operations.
Yeah. And I look at it like this. When we talk about striking while the iron's hot, you're right. That was your chance. And it was a lot of people that were picking Buffalo to win on the road in Denver. You know, even though Denver had shown that they were one of the best teams in the NFL all last season, but I think it was more so the experience factor played a part in people picking Buffalo. We were banking on the experience of Josh Allen, Sean McDermott. I still think Sean McDermott is a hell of a coach. I still think that. Um, we just felt like that experience was gonna triumph over the inexperience that the Denver Broncos had, and it just didn't work out. And honestly, you're right. The drafting has not been good, and I don't feel like the blame has been dispersed evenly throughout the whole process. I think that a lot of blame was put on Sean McDermott's shoulders, and then a lot of blame was put on Josh Allen. But we're not giving that front office enough flack for their inability to put playmakers around Josh Allen. For example, with the wide receiver position, with the Keon Coleman drama that ended up happening last season, you would think that they would have gotten more blame. But like you said, it led to a guy getting promoted instead of, and he kind of, skated by and was basically not held accountable for the things that he's done while he's been in that position of power. So I'd look at it like this. Buffalo they're in a very unique position because while they're undergoing so much like change, they're still one of the best teams in the AFC and let alone the NFL. So it's like they're not undergoing some of the different types of ups and downs that a lot of teams are going through. Like they still have a former NFL MVP and the reigning NFL MVP in Josh Allen. And so, I'm sorry, not the reigning NFL 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I'm sorry. The reigning NFL MVP is Matt Stafford. And my point is that they still have one of the best quarterbacks in the game, a very serviceable and very good top running back in the game in James Cook. They have made some key additions that we'll talk about in just a second, but they're in a very good position. I think that they just have to capitalize because, like you said about the Kansas City Chiefs, don't expect them to be as like bad like people think. Yeah, Mahomes is out right now, but they did go out and sign like a Justin Fields, so it's gonna be as bad as people think. I know Andy Reid's he's done far more with far less. So I'm not expecting them to just be at the bottom. I do expect the Kansas City Chiefs to be up there as well as other teams like another team in their own division. So I'm expecting them to face a lot of competition this year, but I am expecting them to kind of right the ship because this is still one of the divisions that we can say is like a up to about a two-team division right now. We know about the Jets, we know about the Dolphins, but right now, those Patriots and those Buffalo Bills, they're jockeying for position at the top of the AFC East. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
So we threw some salt right there, but let's put some sugar on it because there have been some good moves that they made here in the offseason. Hiring Jim Leonard as the defensive coordinator, that's bringing in a fresh philosophy, young mind, new culture to the building. Because it's Pat Riley who once said that you have about a 5-year window as a coach where you are effective and your voice does not get tired to the players. And honestly, there's a chance that Sean McDermott's voice may have gotten tired to the players to some degree. Of course, you never want to see anybody lose their job of any sort in the relationships that you cultivate over time. But it might have just been time for a new voice to be in there. And not only as the head coach, but Sean McDermott's a defensive minded coach. So there's a new defensive philosophy that comes with Jim Leonard, too. But two key player additions that they made acquiring DJ Moore in the trade that they made with the Chicago Bears in exchange for a draft pick second-round draft pick from this year's NFL draft. I think that's a quietly underrated move that people are not talking enough about. To me, it gives Josh Allen his number one wide receiver that he hasn't had since Stephon Diggs was there. And it's a guy who knows how to play the number one position. And he's going to be hungry to come out and prove something too. With how last season went in Chicago, especially in the second half of the season, him looking like the odd man out in that wide receiving room that they had there. The second biggest move to me, though, is one that nobody's really been talking about, and that's Bradley Chubb. They signed him to a 3-year contract. And Bradley Chubb's a guy that injuries have honestly derailed him from being what we honestly thought he was going to be coming into the NFL. Because those first couple of years in Denver, it was looking like scary hours. And then he had season-ending injury. I believe it was a torn Achilles that happened right there. Then he ends up getting traded to Miami. He had some effective seasons in Miami, but after Vic Fangio departed, nothing was really the same. Vic Fangio leaving the Miami Dolphins to go take the job with the Philadelphia Eagles, and you see that the Philadelphia Eagles defense each year under Vic Fangio is basically hell for people to have to deal with. That just tells you how elite of a defensive mind he is. Now he's going to the Buffalo Bills. And you know he's hungry to prove something as they are hungry to prove something collectively together. And sometimes you just have an opportunity to bring two parties together that are trying to accomplish a goal desperately. And I think he's going to be able to do for this defense in ways what they were hoping Von Miller would have been able to do a couple of seasons ago, what they were hoping that Joey Bosa would have been able to do for them last season. If he's able to stay healthy, I think he's going to be a constant to go in there with that defense, along with Ed Oliver and company.
Yeah, that was a big free agency pickup. Also, signing D. Alford from the Falcons, who's, like I said, he's not a shutdown corner by any means, but a great person that you can have in that nickel slot, even if he needs to guard your number 2 receiver. I think that you got someone that you can plug in right away and he can make a difference. But going back to Bradley Chubb, I think that, like you said, you're hoping that you can get more out of him than what you were expecting from like a Joey Bosa or even a Von Miller at one point. I think that with Ed Oliver and Bradley Chubb on that defensive front, they can make some waves. And I think that they needed to go out there and be aggressive in free agency. Also, the DJ Moore deal was the sweetener in the whole thing, but I think that they needed to go out there and make a splash. I think that Buffalo, after going out of the playoffs the way they did, firing their head coach, I think that it was important that they, reinvigorated the fans' belief that they are still a Super Bowl contender. I think they did that. Getting the number 1 guy in DJ Moore solves at least part of the problem that you had on offense. Your woes of having no playmakers surrounding Josh Allen other than James Cook. I mean, now you just signed, I believe you signed either Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid. One of them just received a new contract. I'm a little shaky on which one, but I'll touch bases on that in just a second. But it is more important that if you're going to have an NFL caliber, MVP caliber quarterback, that you surround him with enough talent to go out there and perform.
They also, I want to talk about some of the moves they made in the draft that were big too. TJ Parker out of Clemson, that second-round pick, a young edge rusher being able to come in there and learn from Bradley Chubb and Ed Oliver, that could pay dividends. Davidson Igbunison, the cornerback from Ohio State. To me, he's one of those quiet names that people probably didn't pay enough attention to at Ohio State. And those are usually the scariest type of players that come from a school like Ohio State. We'll see what he's able to do. Revamping parts of that offensive line by drafting Drew Bowery out of Boston College. He can be a tackle or he can be a guard for him. Skylar Bell out of Connecticut, the wide receiver. So I like overall what they were able to do this offseason, just adding through the draft, through free agency. Now we just got to see them come in and put it all together. And the big question that everybody has, of course, is can Joe Brady be that guy for them as a head coach? Can he be Josh McAllen's Mike Shanahan? Because remember, can he be, let me reword that a little bit differently. Can he be to Josh Allen what Mike Shanahan was to John Elway? There we go. Because if you remember, John Elway started off his career with Dan Reeves, the late great Dan Reeves, God rest his soul. They went to 3 Super Bowls together. But Dan Reeves, very old school minded coach, practiced differently, learned the ropes under the legendary late great Tom Landry, rest his soul as well. And if you watch the John Elway documentary that came out recently, you could just tell that the voice was just getting tired. And at times, no matter how much love Josh Allen said that he has for Sean McDermott, and I don't doubt that in any way, KB, it just felt like the voice was starting to get tired here a little bit. So is Joe Brady innovative enough to the point to where Mike Shanahan was when they made the move on him? Because Mike Shanahan started out in Denver as their offensive coordinator. He left there to go become the head coach of the, at the time, Los Angeles Raiders. It did not work out there. Before they brought him back to Denver, he was the offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. This is the 1994 season, the last Super Bowl that San Francisco won. Then they brought him back in the building. Now, I know that Joe Brady doesn't have any of that stuff on his resume of what I just said. But it was a strong chance, KB, that if Zach Taylor had been fired by the Cincinnati Bengals, that Joe Brady would have been brought over to the Cincinnati Bengals because of the success that he had with Joe Burrow and them winning the national championship together at LSU with Joe Brady as his coordinator there. So can he take Josh Allen to that next level? Can they take each other to that next level? That's the question that remains on everybody's mind.
I mean, if I had to give my early prediction, I would say yes, because like I said, we've seen him, you just talked about his success with Joe Burrow back at LSU and how high profile and electric that offense was. So I think innovation wise, yes, I think that it's just a talent that needs to be surrounded by him. I think that he now has a very I think he has a very unique position because he doesn't have to, he already has the quarterback problem solved, which is one of the positions of need that a lot of teams don't have the luxury of saying that we have a guy like a Josh Allen already in the building. So we don't have to go out and find a quarterback and hope that he can adjust to our system. This is a system that Josh Allen, I feel like, is accustomed to running. He's athletic and he's innovative enough as a player to run whatever Joe Brady needs him to run. And I think that now it's just about the weapons surrounding him. So if you want my early prediction, I'll say yes.
It's different though. Yes, he knows the system, but it's different. And you know it's different. It's different when you go from being just the play caller of the offense to being the head coach of the entire football team. How well does he adjust to that move? That's a question that remains to be asked. And of course, we're not going to know until we actually see it.
I mean, no doubt about that. But it was the same thing with Ben Johnson. I mean, we had no idea what he was going to become once he stepped in that from that coordinator role to head coaching role, and he did it seamlessly. Like he was doing it with a young quarterback. Josh Allen being a more of a veteran now. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking at it like they can learn from each other because I look at it like this. Joe Brady's going to be in one of those positions he's never been in before. So this is going to be a learning curve for him because he's going to have to just take over more than just play calling duties. He's going to be the head of the ship no matter what. He's going to receive credit when they win. He's going to receive a lot of blame when they lose. So everything's going to rest on his shoulders. But I think the fact that he has a veteran QB is going to make the world of a difference. And we've seen guys be in great situations like Caleb Williams. He came into a situation where he had one of the great offensive minds in the game. We've seen it with Kyle Shanahan as well. Sometimes we have great offensive minds that just know how to get the best out of a quarterback and get the best out of the tools that they have. That's the reason why I'm believing in what Joe Brady can do for Josh Allen and what Josh Allen can do for Joe Brady in his career as well.
Now, as we did last week, we'll give you guys our divisional rankings in terms of who we think is going to win this division after we preview all 4 teams in the division. I want to move on now to the Miami Dolphins, another team in this division. And they blew it up, KB. They sent Mike McDaniels out the door. They sent Tua out the door. They sent Tyreek Hill out the door. So here are the moves that they made. They brought in Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator from Green Bay, one of the sharp young defensive minds in the game, was a highly touted coaching candidate for a lot of those positions that were open. He brings over with him from Green Bay veteran quarterback Malik Willis. But here's the problem. The only real offensive piece that Malik Willis has to work with is Devin Achane. because they sent Jalen Waddle out the door. He is now a Denver Bronco. We just discussed Tyreek Hill. They blew up some pieces up on the defense. Listen, I don't want to talk down, and I don't want to have Miami Dolphins fans, hating us for this, but we're going to keep it a buck. This is a rebuilding project. 2026 is a rebuilding year. I don't have high expectations for them this year, and that's nothing against Jeff Hafley or Malik Willis or the staff over there or even the players on that team. But the wide receivers that they currently have in that room were probably the front runners to be the 1 and the 2 KB or Tutu Atwell and Jalen Tolbert. And we've been waiting for them to break out and become at least prominent number 2 level receivers in the league for a few seasons now, and it just hasn't happened. Now, does that mean they're going to be the worst team in the league? No, I don't think that. I don't think any team in this division is actually going to be the worst team in the league. And we're going to talk about that in a moment when we talk about the next team that we're going to discuss in this division. But my expectations for them, maybe 4 wins at most, possibly 5. But I can't really go too much beyond that because Malik Willis was signed to a good team-friendly deal. But I also think this is also another audition for him, too, despite the times that he proved in Green Bay that he should be given a shot to be a starting quarterback in the league. I think it's an audition for him in Miami for them to see, can he be their long-term answer, especially when you consider that from everything that we've been told, all the reports that are coming out, next season's draft is supposed to be loaded with good quarterback prospects.
Yeah, I mean, look at it like this. Malik Willis is going to be up against it because literally you just named he has no playmakers outside of H&M. I think that you can't really demand too much from him. Yes, you gave him a very team-friendly deal. Happy he got his money. I felt like it was well deserved. But at the same time, you knew what this was once you had made these moves. You moved off of Tua. You moved off of Tyreek Hill. You moved off of Jalen Waddle. You moved off of Bradley Chubb. You pretty much gotten rid of some of your veteran leadership that was on this team. You moved off of Mike McDaniel. So you no longer are tied to these contracts that were so hefty in nature that you were unable to make moves. You didn't have the flexibility. Now you bring in a new head coach and Jeff Hadley. You bring in a new quarterback, a young quarterback who still has a lot to prove. Like, yeah, he got the money, but he still got a lot to prove because we saw you saw flashes in Green Bay of the talent that Malik Willis had, and even seen flashes of the talent when he was in college. But now it's going to be where, okay, now you're not on a backup role where you come in every few games and throw a few touchdowns. Now this is your team. You're the head of this team, and like I said, it's going to be one of those things. They're going to take their lumps for sure. That's almost for certain. We know it's going to happen.
So I will say this, though. I feel like they got a good foundational piece to add, especially on the offensive line, to start things off in this past draft, drafting Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle out of Alabama with the number 12 overall pick. Chris Johnson, the San Diego State cornerback, was drafted with the number 27 overall pick. And here's the remainder of those draft picks. Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker out of Texas Tech in the second round. 3 third-round picks. Caleb Douglas, a wide receiver. Will Kemrick, a tight end. Chris Bell, a wide receiver. In the fourth round, 2 picks. Trey Moore, an edge rusher out of Texas. Kyle Lewis, a linebacker out of Pittsburgh. So you pretty much see that there's a trend here. They went very defensive heavy on this, and I don't necessarily find that surprising considering that they hired a young defensive-minded head coach.
Yeah, and I think that, it's gonna be one of those situations soon that you will start seeing them start building around Malik Willis. I think they want to see what he can do with the weapons that he has coming up. I think, it's gonna be wide receiver room that's very, when you look at it on paper, it's very underwhelming. It's gonna be one of those. It's gonna be a rough time. I think it's gonna be a bunch of like ball being spread around different places. A-Chan is going to be used as more of a receiver, I believe, than he's been used in the past. Even more now so because he has a young quarterback. It's going to be a lot of dump downs. I don't see that big play receiver that he desperately needs. Go ahead,
Could
H.
it be Caleb Douglas out of Texas Tech?
Possibly, possibly, but I'm looking at it right now. It's still too early to call it because it's not that we're looking at a name to jump out at us. It's more so I'm trying to see the production out there. Like, what would we be expecting from a guy that from a young guy like that? What would we be expecting as far as his output with a young quarterback who's coming into a new system, a new team? Like, I don't know.
Well, KB, and I've said this on the show many times, I don't necessarily put expectations on first year players coming into the league. You have to learn the playbook and you have to learn the style of the NFL. A lot of these guys end up surprising us, and I think that he could at least emerge as a guy that surprises us that comes out of that locker room. Just and no disrespect to Tutu Atwell or Jalen Tolbert, I don't expect them to do big things because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and you're coming like. Tutu Atwell and Tolbert are coming from situations where they never were asked to be the number one or the number two guy. They're coming from a situation where they're at best number three at best number three receivers. So it's like it's a whole different ball game when you're seeing the number one corner, number two corner getting different type of coverages every week, as opposed to, you're not a number one or number two guy. And I think that's what it is. Now, can he be the guy? Possibly, but like I said, I'm not gonna put too many expectations because I feel like we have that expectation that he's gonna go out there guns blazing and Malik Willis is gonna light it up. I think we're gonna be a little bit disappointed. But what it will show you, that backfield with him and Achane, it will be a little bit difficult to game plan for him because of the versatility that Malik Willis shows. His ability to run, like as far as like you having the option to run a read option, you being able to do RPOs out of these type of packages because of the fact that you have a dual threat quarterback and you have a running back who's also a threat in the pass game. Like, these are things that they're gonna have some encouraging things to look forward to, but it's not gonna happen this season. I think that everyone in Miami just has to show a level of patience because we know that they're not there yet, and I don't think this was made to be their year.
But can you see signs? I think that's what the front office is really going
Yeah.
to be looking at. Like, do we see signs of something that could be promising?
Absolutely. I think that this was a year with the moves they made in free agency. I think signing Malik Willis is just as good as an investment, if anything, because you're investing into that talent. Because it's not like you just saw an absorbent amount of game tape. You're banking on what you did see because in the games that he did play, he did play very well. He played very well. He was calm, he was collected. He showed what he could do on the ground, he showed what he could do in the air. I think that this is more an investment type of signing. You locked up on a pretty good deal if you ask me. Like, I think that getting off the Tua deal, this was a very good deal for the organization, and I think this move shows that you're serious about investing. If you're going to make Malik Willis your franchise guy, you need to get like everything that you need to see coming up is going to be a good look into what you are banking on for the future. Like, if he can be that guy.
Yeah, a lot of this for this new front office coming in was undoing a lot of what Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel did, locking certain guys up into contracts, and also getting just some of probably what felt like toxic culture out of the locker room. Not calling the guys toxic per se here, but too much noise coming out of the locker room with Tua. Too much noise coming out of the locker room with Tyreek Hill. He had to get that stuff out of there. But Jalen Waddle is the only move I question. Do you make that? Because you just signed this quarterback, and when they signed Malik Willis and Jalen Waddle was still on the roster, I was actually excited for that potentially happening. I didn't actually believe they would move Jalen Waddle, and then they did.
I think that that move was the most shocking. I did think that it was going to be, the rumors were going on all season. Was Jalen Waddle going to get moved? And I think that you sign a young quarterback, it would be good to give him a legit number one guy. And that's why I thought that, Jalen Waddle was going to stay. And so when he was moved to Denver, shout out to Denver for making that move as well, because I think that helped bolster their wide receiving room as well. But I think that it kind of handicapped Malik Willis, to be honest with you, because a speedy guy like Jalen Waddle, who can take the top off defense, work the intermediate routes, I think that would have helped to have a guy like that on the team. Because Jalen Waddle's not a guy who's very disruptive. I look at it like that. I've never heard anything bad about him as a teammate. You never hear any rumblings that he's a bad diva type of wide receiver. So I think a guy like Jalen Waddle would have been a perfect pair next to Malik Willis if you want me to be honest with you. So it was kind of surprising, but that just told me like as soon as that move was made, even before the Malik Willis signing, it just showed me that they were going in a different direction from the bottom to the top as far as the organization goes. So it was surprising though. I will say that because I thought that that would have been someone you wanted to pair with Malik Willis, not deal at in the offseason.
Jumping from Miami and going up to New York, where we've got the Jets, who I want to begin by saying that they have a bright future because they drafted Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey with the #2 overall pick, traded Jermaine Johnson to the Titans for another nose tackle in Tavondre Sweat. Other notable first round picks, or other notable high draft picks that they had, I should say. Kenyon Sadiq, I like that. Omar Cooper Jr., I like that one too. D'Angelo Pons, I like that. I like two moves that they made last season during the year, KB. Trading Quentin Williams away to the Dallas Cowboys and getting a good piece of draft capital in return for him. Trading Sauce Gardner away to the Indianapolis Colts and getting very good draft capital for him. I think somebody in Indianapolis, I honestly think that if they don't get it together there, I think somebody is going to end up losing their job as a result of this. So they got a bright future. They got a lot of good stuff to work with. The only thing is, I don't think that that starts in 2026. I think that there could be a new head coach and a new general manager that's going to get to reap the benefits of having all of these goodies to be able to work with. Because despite everything that I just said, I don't think that this is a team that's going to do great things at all in 2026. The starting quarterback of that room is more than likely going to be Geno Smith. This is his second time around with the team, and it did not go well his first time around with the team. And the last time we saw him on the field with the Raiders, it was looking terrible there too. Now, I know he had a stint in Seattle where he had a good little run there, but that season last year with the Raiders, because I look at the version of the Raiders that we've known for years now, and I compare it to the Jets, and it's actually pretty equal when you look at the level of dysfunction that looks like is inside of those organizations. Hopefully, they're both starting to get that cleaned up so that they can move forward. But I don't think that this general manager is necessarily going to get to see this through. And I don't think that the head coach is going to get to see it through either. And that's unfortunate because we don't want to see anybody lose their job. But I'm just being real here with you because I don't see a quarterback in the room that is going to surprise me to do big things. Even though they drafted Klubnik out of Clemson, I got to be honest with you, KB. I was never high on Klubnik. I have never thought that his game would necessarily translate well to the NFL. Now, I could be wrong on it, but there's a bright future for the New York Jets. It just doesn't start in 2026. I think it's going to be a lot more trash bags over fans' heads, miserable Sundays for Fireman Ed, and counting down the clock on Aaron Glenn and his tenure as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate just because you look at it like I do believe Aaron Glenn is one of the good coaches in the league, but it is certain things that you have to say about the circumstance that is up in New York. I look at it like if your starting quarterback is Geno Smith, I don't have many expectations there because I didn't have any expectations for him last season. Hell, even if you want to talk about Seattle, I didn't have expectations prior to him signing with Seattle, so it was one of those things where they are going to be who they are. What they can look for is vast improvement from last year. That is something that they can strive for. If you're not going to, because you're not going anywhere this season. I think that's pretty obvious.
And I want to say this when you say vast improvement, folks, we aren't necessarily talking about wins and losses. We're talking about just on the field product improvement. You realize that Aaron Glenn is a defensive minded coach and the New York Jets did not record a single interception last season? We can start off by just having more of that actually take place. A team actually being able to collect turnovers, especially when your head coach is more defensive minded. Can we see some form of progress in that way? Because we're not talking about wins and losses, but you got to take baby steps sometimes. And that's what the New York Jets are going to have to take.
And I think having a guy like Minka Fitzpatrick will help that. Hopefully, will help that back end of the defense come up with possibly some interceptions. We know he's been one of the great safeties in the league over the past couple of years. Also, going out and signing Demario Davis, I think that will help bring some veteran leadership to that defense as well. Um, so it is going to be a thing where I don't think Aaron Glenn survives this, and I think it's kind of bad because you saw it didn't work out with Robert Saleh as well. It's more than likely probably not going to work out with Aaron Glenn, and there's going to be yet another coach that's a casualty of their situation. That is the New York Jets, and we know it's been a dumpster fire. But like I said, you look at the processes that you have going on, like the way you finish games, the way you execute in certain situations. That's where I'm looking at as far as your vast improvement. It doesn't necessarily have to attribute to wins or losses. It just has to attribute to, do you look better than you did last season? Because there was a lot that went wrong last season. You had the owner publicly calling out Justin Fields. It was a lot of things that went wrong, a lot of dysfunction. And I think that you have to kind of start taking baby steps to rid yourself of that bad mojo that was the locker room last year, and just overall everything that's been going on in New York. I feel bad for Aaron Glenn. I really do, because I feel like that he got put into a lose-lose situation. There is no winning here because you're not even the third best team. I don't even know what I would make of them. And it's crazy because you had Breece Hall going on X last year saying, like, he's seen all the guys that he came in that he was with, all his guys getting dealt, and he was like, "When's my turn? When am I getting dealt?" That's a bad sign that, like, you don't have a great culture there. You don't have a great culture. Guys don't want to be there.
And just for the record, we all were sitting there wondering, when is Brees Hall going to get dealt and where is he going to get dealt?
I honestly was surprised. And I know Garrett Wilson has been in the back of his mind as well, because we know what a good quarterback can do for a star wide receiver. Hell, if you don't believe me, look at what Justin Jefferson had to endure last season. I know a great quarterback helps out a great wide receiver, and without them, it's kind of just, it's like water and oil. They ain't mixing. I don't know exactly what to make of Geno, because at this point, Geno, I feel like he is who he is. We've seen Geno in different situations. He's going to put up a bunch of yards. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a better quarterback at as far as throwing the ball than Justin Fields was. But that's very low hanging fruit for what I'm actually looking for.
You want to know the positive thing that I think that Geno Smith is going to bring to the New York Jets, and I don't know how much this helps the on the field product, but I do think that it is something that they need, and that is good veteran leadership in the quarterback room. Because I'm not so sure that they had that last year, and that's not a knock at Justin Fields, but this is still a relatively young quarterback who's still trying to find his way in the league. And I think that Kansas City is going to help with that, with where he is now. But the Jets need some steady veteran leadership at certain positions, and you need that at quarterback. At every team in the NFL needs that. If you don't have good leadership in the quarterback room, thanks for flying United.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. Like, I don't, and like, even with Cade Klubnik, I mean, maybe he gets the chance to play at some point this season, but I wasn't thoroughly impressed with him last year either. And he was supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks coming out of his class. So I'm not, barring anything crazy, he may see the field, but it's not like I have high expectations for him either. Now, the Jets do have some pieces that they still can look forward to. Like I said, you still have Breece Hall in the backfield. You still have Garrett Wilson. You have a young tight end in Mason Taylor. You have people like A.D. Mitchell on the outside as well. So you have a young team, but it's not all bad, because just off of the people that they brought in, you're already going to you should be a much improved defense. You also went out and signed David Onyemata. Like, you got a little bit better. I'm not going to say you just got significantly better, because that's not true, but you at least are taking strides to get better as a team on defense.
Another thing that they did, and this was adding good defensive leadership in the locker room to go along with Minka Fitzpatrick, they brought Demario Davis in, the longtime linebacker with the New Orleans Saints. Now, he is not anywhere close to the player that he used to be anymore, but he's going to bring good leadership to the locker room. And sometimes that's what you need to really help get those young players going.
Yeah, like I said, luring Demario Davis away from the Saints was big to me because, like I said, does he have to be the Demario Davis of old? No. But what he'll bring to that leadership, like bring as far as leadership, what Minka Fitzpatrick will bring as far as leadership. Guys that have been in the trenches, some of these guys have been a part of like deep playoff runs. So it's not necessarily about them getting in and just giving the same level of productivity that they've given in the past. It's more so about establishing a culture going forward because
Can
they
you
are not,
help? Can you help teach these young guys how to be pros?
yeah. Can you help them get up to speed with how to, get up to speed with how the NFL works, how it is to, like especially on the defensive side of the ball, like you're helping some of these younger guys out. You don't have a Sauce Gardner in the building anymore. You don't have a Quentin Williams on the line anymore. Those guys are off to different situations. And honestly, I think that Aaron Glenn, he just has to go out there. He just has to go out there and coach his ass off, to be honest with you, because you're gonna be on the hot seat coming into this season no matter what, just because of how poorly the first year went. So I think that you just have to go out there and coach like there is no tomorrow because it may not be.
You're not wrong, but I think he's screwed either way. And the reason I say that
For
is
sure.
because you know that what the Jets are going to be looking for in this next draft, unless Cade Klubnik can just prove everybody wrong and really prove to be the guy, you know what they're going to be looking at as a quarterback. And what they're going to be looking for that quarterback is an offensive minded coach, more than likely, or at least that's the trend that the NFL would tell you that they should look in.
Yeah, I would like to see Cade Klubnik get out there. To be honest, I want to see him get out there because, like I said, if Gino ain't getting it done, you need to at least see what you got with the young guy. And I think that hopefully, he gets his opportunity to go out there and see what he can prove. But like I said, it's gonna be one of those teams where I feel like that Brees is gonna be asked to do a lot, even more than he's been asked to do in the past. So hopefully that they can just keep themselves in that like 4, possibly 5 win region because that's the most I see for them this season. They got a lot of, young pieces. They have some veteran leadership, so hopefully they can just work on improving what they had at the end of last season.
Last but not least, for the AFC East, we got to talk about the New England Patriots. And this is one of the most interesting teams in the NFL to me, KB, because they could stay where they are to the level of where they were in 2025, and it wouldn't surprise me. Or they could have a bit of a drop off, and it would not surprise me. Some because of what the on the field product could look like, some because there might be factors at play within the locker room that you could say would be a distraction. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that is Mike Vrabel and the things that we know that took place this offseason, the things that we saw in the headlines this offseason, different things like that. You're going to tell me that you don't think that's going to have some type of effect in that locker room?
Come on, man. Like the way that made headlines, I think it is going to have some effect. To what extent, I don't know, because hopefully you would think that, these guys, constant professionals, they can kind of just erase it from their minds, but we know we don't live in that type of world. We know that this, I guess, scandal that went on with Mike Vrabel over the end of last season coming into the offseason, I think it was something to be said. Not only that, you had a lot of drama surrounding a team that's just coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. Um, between the AJ Brown situation, the Stephon Diggs situation, the Mike Vrabel situation. There's a lot that went on with these Patriots, man. And usually it's a team you don't really hear too much about, especially this past season. Drake May finishing second in MVP. It was a lot of good things that came out of last season. But then as the season continued, the Stephon Diggs troubles came up, and now it's still going on. It's still ongoing. Although he's not a part of the Patriots right now, it's still ongoing. So that's going on. Then you had the rumored AJ Brown deal that finally materialized into something that went on. So there's a lot that been circulating around that locker room, and so yeah.
And I want to say one thing about the Mike Vrabel situation. We're not accusing him of anything because we don't know that anything actually happened between him and Diana Rossini. The optics just look bad. That's the thing. The optic. Nobody's saying he did anything illegal. Whatever may or may not have happened, that is for those folks to deal with their families, quite honestly. But the optics of it, they look shaky. They look questionable. And it just makes you honestly look at the Patriots like, you sure that this is the image that you want to represent your team, even though you guys just went to a Super Bowl with him in the first year? See, this is a situation to me, KB, where if the Patriots have enough of a drop off to where they actually end up missing the playoffs, and say significant injuries are not a big reason why, it would not shock me if at the end of the season we wake up one morning and we see that the Patriots and Mike Vrabel have mutually decided to part ways.
So you can see, so you think it'd be a situation where they can move on from him if it doesn't go the way, because we always hear about that Super Bowl slump, that slump right after, getting to a Super Bowl and losing. We've seen teams come back, some come back strong, but some miss the playoffs completely. So you're saying barring no injuries, you think that if they finish the season out poorly, that they could be looking at a mutual parting? That's where you're at.
Barring no serious injuries to like serious impact players. Like if AJ Brown's out there, if Drake May's out there, if those defensive guys who help spearhead the defense, if they're out there, and this team has a bit of a drop off, say that they go 9-8, 8-9, 7-10. And of course, those records are more than likely not going to be good enough to make the postseason. I could see a situation where they would move on. Because the only reason I feel like Robert Kraft didn't move on is because of what ended up happening last season and the results that they had versus what they had been having in the previous 2 to 3 seasons before all of 2025 happened.
So you don't see at least possibly one more year. So wait, would you think it would be more so of the organization's choice, or would it be a more of Mike Vrabel's choice to not come back if there is some kind of like thing where
I'm
like or both?
I'm gonna say it's more on the organization because I believe Mike Vrabel wants to coach. I believe he wants to be the head coach of this football team. But Robert Kraft, as much of a good relationship to great relationship as I'm sure he and Mike Vrabel have, you don't think he had at least one moment where he might have looked in the mirror as like, should I keep him based off of this? And it's hard to move off of a coach after he takes you to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's kind of like puzzling to me is like, would they dare move off of him coming off of a year where like, because you got to think about it, Patriots have not been relevant. You've seen them go through the Cam Newtons and guys before they got to Drake May, and even with Drake May, he needed the right head coach to be able to get the most out of him. So I don't know. That's the only reason why I'm kind of like, I'm not sure if the organization would move off him as early as next season. Possibly I would give him one more year, because it was just like, I know that was one of the things that Robert Kraft probably looked at it like, it's not a good look, and it's putting us in a bad light after a year that should have been nothing but positivity. After the year we had, we pretty much coached up a guy that barring a few votes could have been the MVP. So it was kind of just like, I don't know if we are willing to move off of him just yet. I mean, I could see it, but it's just like, I would think that they would give him at least one more year if they don't make the playoffs this year.
I mean, we very well could be wrong on this. And like this probably might not end up being a distraction at all for most of the locker room, whatever the case may be. And maybe the relationship is just enough to, continue to build this. And maybe Robert Kraft looks at it like, well, the last few years with Belichick weren't great. The one season that we had with Gerard Mayo definitely was not great. Mike came in and he helped steady the ship. And I don't want to take a chance of losing a guy who helped me get this thing back on track when I didn't know when it would get back on track. It's very possible that that could play a role in it too, and maybe they end up not doing anything. But the big off season moves that they made, definitely the acquisition of AJ Brown, very important to get Drake May, a wide receiver one in the building who's still in his prime. Because Stephon Diggs had really good numbers last year, but the problem is he's on the back nine. Like he himself, who's not signed to a team right now, and I believe that his off-field issues have a lot to do with that. But he himself said that he's the best wide receiver two in the league. That's what he said himself. And I'm gonna be, you tell me, KB, have you ever heard anybody claim to be the best number two at anything?
First of all, I don't believe what he's saying at all because we just go, if we were to just go through the teams and just go through straight number two receivers, he's still not my number. He's still not my top number two receiver. I don't even know if he's top five as far as a number two receiver. And that's not crazy to say because you got teams where if I had to go through some of these guys, I would definitely say I would want that person over Stephon Diggs. Now, like you said, getting AJ Brown, very big. He needed that go-to receiver. I think also Romeo Doubs signing was an actual big signing as well because now it gives him a little bit more weapons. He still has Hunter Henry. It's gonna be very exciting, and you know what exactly what I'm looking for next season? The evolution and the continuing like improvement of Travion Henderson. I think that he showed me a lot last year. You know, I know that Quinshawn Judkins over in Cleveland, he got a lot of love from a lot of people at one point, but Travion Henderson, he was doing some good work, especially later in the season after he was taking more of the carries from Ramondre Stevenson. So I would love to see what he's going to come into next season. Like I know they went also and signed Kevin Byard as well. So they're making moves. I think the Patriots are going to be just okay. I think that as long as they can get out of that whole distraction thing that was going on with Mike Vrabel, they're going to be okay because they made enough moves, I think, to still get back to possibly a AFC championship because they're that good. It's going to be some contention going on with teams like Buffalo, Kansas City, and just to name a few, but they're going to be right back in the same picture, in my opinion.
So now it's time to talk about who we think is going to win the division. I can tell you off rip, I think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. I think that the Buffalo Bills will win this division. I think the Patriots, despite everything I just said, I think they get back to the playoffs as a wild card. But I think the Buffalo Bills win this division, and it honestly could be a magical year for them.
Ooh, I'm not mad at that because they were either going to be my number one or two. I'm going to still pick the Patriots right now. I do think that their team defense is going to be enough to get it done, to give them the slight edge. I think they got a lot to prove this year. I think that AJ Brown, like I said, he's going to help that offense out tremendously. I think that defense is still damn good. Um, but if Buffalo's does end up winning the division, it's not going to surprise me. Like I'm very split on who I thought was winning that division, but I do think Buffalo is going to have a good shot to win that division because of all the strides they made on both offense and defense. So. I'm not mad at it. I need to see what this whole Joe Brady dynamic is going to look like as a head coach first. Those first few weeks will tell me a lot. So I'm not mad that you picked them because they were either number one or number two for me.
All right, we got quick hitters coming up here. KB, take us to them.
Starting off with the World Cup. If we're going to get into some action, we got to give our flowers to the Argentina men's team winning in a thrilling 2-1 game against England yesterday to advance to the World Cup final where they are looking to go back to back. Yeah, man, it's something to be said about this because we've seen plenty of times where they were down but not out. Them them equalizing the game in the late stages of the game and then eventually getting a header to take the lead. And that was the game winning goal. I think it's a lot to be said about this team because I didn't know if they were going to come back as good as they were in 2022. They might be even be better because the way that they've finished these games, bro, it's something to be said. Like the heart of a champion can't be undermined at all because they are showing that they're still the best until you beat them. So, Lionel Messi, he has a chance to go back to back in World Cups, which is crazy because it took him so long just to get to this first one, and now he has a chance to get two. So that would be a hell of a way to end a career.
England had it. England, they were right there, and then it's like the coach stopped like coaching in that aggressive type of manner with 37 minutes left in the game, and that changed everything. And now we've got the young prodigy in Spain versus the man that used to lead Spain. It honestly, you couldn't have went wrong with any of the four teams that made the semis if versus who would have made it to the final game. If you got France and Argentina, you got Messi versus Mbappe. And to me, that's the big money matchup. The
Yeah.
two biggest names, arguably, in the sport right now. But Spain's been the best team.
Yeah.
And I honestly think Spain is going to win this thing.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's going to also take us into our next quick hitter. Spain put on a masterclass against in a lot of people's eyes, the heavy favorite to come out, which is France. A lot of teams seen France, a lot of people seen France as this steamroller that was just going through the World Cup. And Mbappe was looking as good as ever, and a lot of people picked them to hoist that trophy up at the very end because I was thinking that we were on a collision course for a World Cup final rematch from 4 years ago with France going against Argentina, but Spain showed it. Like you said, they're the best team overall so far in this tournament. They showed it. They exerted their dominance against France. And I couldn't believe what I was watching. Really, it was a masterclass. And so, shout out to them. Looking like they're going to be the heavy favorite. I know that, you know, Argentina has the best player, in my opinion, in the world. But Spain has the best team. And we know that players going against the best team don't always fare well when you're talking about what is needed. But if Argentina can pull this off, I mean, we haven't had a back-to-back winner in a long time. So I think that it's something to be said about what they're doing. I think it's something to be said about what Spain doing because I think like you said, you couldn't go wrong with any of those top four teams because I think as far as their power rankings in the world, those were the top four teams. I think Spain was number one. Spain and I think France was number one and two, and then Argentina and England leveled out the end of the group. But you couldn't really go wrong. And for a second, we can't say that England. I felt bad because England had it, and like you said, it just felt like that it was an epic collapse, really, because it was already bad enough to give up the equalizer. Then you come out and you give up the game-winning goal. To just go out like that, it was just bad. But like I said, we in store for a show this weekend. If you aren't even a soccer fan, I advise you to watch it because it's going to be something that everybody needs to pay attention to.
Let me ask you a question before we move on to the next quick hitter. If Argentina wins this, do you think that Lionel Messi walks off into the sunset?
I think so because he'll have fulfilled every achievement that there is to fulfill. Like the one World Cup was already enough to put him in legendary status. He's been legendary. He's even been the greatest of all time for a lot of people. I think this closes the argument. Even if there was another person to be Madonna, Ronaldo, Pepe, you could say all of them. He gets this done against this Spain team. I think you got to give it to him. I think he could walk off into the sunset because this is a situation where he's accomplished everything in this sport that he was looking for. For the longest, he was after the World Cup. He finally got his in 2022. Now he goes back to back. I mean, he's solidified. There's nothing else that he has to prove.
The MLB All-Star break happened earlier this week. Johnny Walker edging out Kyle Schwarber in the home run derby, and man, it was a battle. But for Johnny Walker, somewhat of a hometown story for us. I mean, he's from Stone Mountain. We're from pretty close in the area, being from Covington. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the St. Louis Cardinals as a whole because they've been having a much better season. And the reason I say I'm happy for the St. Louis Cardinals is because sports are just a better place when your blue blood franchises are winning and they're putting a good product out there on the field, on the court, no matter what it is. And this 24-year-old from the St. Louis Cardinals, they got a bright future with him being one of the stars of that franchise going forward.
Yeah, and I think that it was crazy to see because ended in a walk-off. I think Schwarber, his power is like incredible. So for anybody to be able to beat him at home, like, this is in Philly. Now, this is basically a home crowd that he's playing in front of. For him to get it done against Kyle Schwarber, who's in a lot of people's eyes the favorite, I think this is incredible. I definitely liked what he said as far as one of his quotes that's been replayed amongst a lot of media outlets that he wants to see more black kids in the baseball because he knows what it can do for them. He's seen what it can do for like them across different other sports, and he wants to see more representation in baseball as well. And I just say, if you're out there, you got a passion for baseball. This would be a great sport to pick up, great sport to learn. And I agree with him. We need equal representation across the board amongst everyone, all groups, but especially he was speaking specifically on his a group that he comes from, a community that he comes from, community that we both come from. So I would like, to see that happen. Commend him for speaking out on it and just wishing him congratulations and hoping him a very successful career. We seen him talking about he wanted to be a Hall of Famer. Hey, sky's the limit for him.
And the final quick hitter we've got for you, the American League shutting out the National League 4-0 in the All-Star game. Cody Bellinger winning the All-Star game MVP. Congratulations to him. I'm not going to lie to you, KB. This this was a glimmer of a game for me. Like, it really felt dim the minute we learned that Otani wasn't going to play. And then we learned that Mizorowski from the Brewers wasn't going to play. Then Paul Skeens didn't play because he pitched on Sunday. Aaron Judge not playing. Like, congratulations to all of the guys who made it in there, but you didn't feel like you had your actual stars in there for the most part.
Yeah, and to be honest, tell me if I'm wrong, Ace, but it just had a different feel this year. Like usually the All-Star game is something that we all look forward to because this is one of the few All-Star games where we say it actually matters. There's real competition. There's real, what I'm saying, gamesmanship, if you will, that's going on during the game. This is really the most significant All-Star game amongst major sports leagues. Like this is one of the games I actually look forward to watching just because I know that I'm gonna get a good show out of it. And it just wasn't that this year. And maybe it was because of all the stars not playing, but also the fact that, it just didn't have that buzz that it usually has. I had a lot of people say that they didn't even know that the game was on. A lot of people just said they weren't aware. And that was, you know, particularly surprising just because of the fact that, All-Star game usually attracts a big viewership as far as the audience watching at home, also the audience that comes in and attends the game itself. So it was very surprising, but yeah, it just didn't have that feel for me this year. It just wasn't that memorable, if I want to say that.
And let me also close it out by saying, on behalf of all of Tampa Bay, we're very thankful that nothing serious happened with Junior Caminero. That was a scary moment when he went down and could have potentially broken his hand. Thankfully, that was not the case, and he actually should be in the lineup on Friday.
Yeah, and it's something that a lot of people were, arguing about. I've seen different sides of the equation. Some people were saying that this is why we need to cancel the game. This is why people need to try. You can't have it both ways because if they were out there just messing around, a lot of people say it's a waste of time. It'd be no different than the NBA All-Star game. It was something that we've been highly critical of. It's something that, he luckily he wasn't significantly hurt. But I think that it was important for him to be out there because they understand how important it is to be an all-star, how important it is to represent your team wearing your team's jersey out there. So I think that it's something that it was just it was a bad thing that happened, but luckily he's okay. But I wouldn't make too much of a big deal about it.
That's gonna wrap up part one. It's running our podcast, but stay tuned because we're coming right back with part two, and we got to break down the NFC East. KB and X coming at you. We'll be right back.